my skin so gorgeous. We thank the life gorgeous. Thank the life gorgeous. I love the life gorgeous. Its torso is so tight.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Life Gorgeous. My name is Craigers. This is where I share my magical life in hopes of improving your life. All-star panel. Sometimes life, well, there are bumps in the road. There's melancholy moments. Cat, Stray Voltage, has been traded. We bring in John Krasinski, a.k.a. Jonny Athletic, award-winning writer from The Athletic. I don't know if that's true. Have you won awards over the years?
I think I got one in like high school and maybe college. So
and
yeah,
I'm right.
Yeah. Yep.
And then local media celebrity Justin Gaardsy from K-Fan, go for play-by-play women's, go for sideline reporting, and of course, enough said. We will not get into your feud with Lori Fisher today. Gaardsy, how are you?
Good to be here. Good to be here. And I've got questions for Johnny, just like you, Craigers. So Johnny might be in the hot seat today a little bit.
Oh boy. Here we go.
John, well, I actually want to start with Gaardsy because I want the emotion of the trade, and John had to put on the work hat and punch out some articles. But I was shocked Friday, sad Saturday morning. I love Cat. Gaardsy, your emotions of the trade.
This is why I wouldn't be a good general manager, because I was emotional about it on Friday night. And I was at the top rated restaurant in Ypsilanti, Michigan, according to TripAdvisor, getting ready for the Gophers and Michigan football game, having a lovely evening. And someone just slid their phone across the table and it said, Karl Anthony Towns has been traded. And if Johnny and Sham say it, you know it's gospel. And I think at that point it was framework. And then like 8 minutes later, it was done. It was all over. And so for the way I say it, guys, we'll talk about the basketball sides of it and why it makes sense for both teams and why they probably had to do it. But it just doesn't feel right that after all the stuff Karl Anthony Towns has been through the last decade, he's not going to be a part of hopefully what's going to be a good payoff with another couple of good seasons. And everyone knows this is Anthony Edwards' team. Karl Anthony Towns knew this was Anthony Edwards' team. But for like old school Wolves fans that go back to the Flip days and the KG days, Karl to me kind of felt like a connection to that group.
Yeah, and I know, Johnny, you and I love Ricky Rubio. And they're guys that you like more. Like you like Tyus more than I do. I like Tyus, but you love Tyus Jones. I assume you love Cat like Justin and I do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, he came. This is the player that I've covered and been around more than anyone else in my whole career, 9 years with Cat. And I was here when he came in as a 19-year-old kid trying to figure things out. I watched him go through mourning Flip's death, mourning his mother's death, like all of the Jimmy Butler nonsense, like all of that stuff. And so, I was close to him through all of that. And I saw how he was sort of depicted in the national media, certainly in like, the inside the NBA talking heads and things, and how they would always call him soft and this and that. And I just thought that people missed a huge element of Cat for most of his career. And that is just like, what an unbelievable heart that the kid has. He is a good person at heart. He wants people to feel loved. He wants to be a part of a family. And he wants to be connected to people. And that's all he wanted when he was here. And so as the person, I just, I'm such a fan of his. And, the player has some flaws here and there, certainly. And there's some frustrations that you go through when you watch him complain to the officials or kick out that leg on his jumper and things like that. It's like, come on, Cat, like, why aren't you stop doing that? But by and large, I just thought that the way that he conducted himself when he was here, the random acts of kindness that he sprinkled throughout, like, I think the world of him as a human being. And so I'm definitely sorry to see him go, and it'll be a completely different feel around here without him here.
So I don't know him as the person that you do, but as a player, I think I have unconditional love for him. I accept his flaws because I think he is so ridiculously gifted. When I first met A-Rod a couple of years ago, when he got the ownership, Mark Laurie, at a Laker game with the Wolves, I said, Cat shot 54% his first 3 seasons. Because I was like, because KG is this great player, but he wasn't the most confident guy offensively. He had to work on his offense.
Right.
It's sometimes effortless for Cat. Now, other times it's that stray voltage forcing the drive and hooking.
Mm-hmm.
But he could shoot. And the thing I've said to people is I know I'm so grateful for Ant. But when Cat gets going, I sometimes get more excited. I just like, and that game 7 he played at Denver, the greatest game in Wolves history. So I'm a Cat guy. Just like when KG went to Boston, I watched every Boston game. I was so happy that KG won a ring. I'm pulling for Cat in New York, and I want those sophisticated Knick fans who know the game. They're going to go, God, I didn't know he had a left hand like that. I mean, the guy is so gifted offensively. He's one of my favorite Wolves players of all time. I mean, Gaardsy, is he one of your favorites or what?
Yeah, and it didn't start out that way. The first few years of his career, I wasn't a huge Cat fan. And I think a lot of it had to do with I think he hit a game-winning shot against the Clippers, Johnny. You might have been out there. It was an ESPN game. And he said to the sideline reporter something like, well, I've got some Kevin Garnett in me, or I've got some KG in me. And as I said at the top, like, if you're going to say that around here, like to kids of the 90s, that still has a Kevin Garnett jersey upstairs, like, that's a big statement to make. And I just didn't see it at that point, like, for all the things that KG did, right? Defensively, leadership, the whole bit. And I understand he's young and he says something stupid, but that bothered me for a really long time when the other stuff would happen. The things with the refs, the turnovers, the wild shots, the losing, the whole bit. I was probably on Jimmy Butler's side more than I should have been at the time.
That's
but
terrible.
But I was clouded by those first couple of years. You may agree with this, Johnny, because you hear me probably more than Craigers, but the last 3 or 4 years, I feel like I've been one of the biggest Cat defenders and one of the biggest Cat fans. And when he goes on Pat Bev's podcast and says something stupid, I'm more just upset as a Cat guy that like, Carl, why are you doing this to yourself again? And by the way, he did no podcast this summer. He did one with Paul George, and I listened to it intently, waiting for him to say something, and he never did. But you just look at what he's done the last 4 or 5 years, being cool with having Anthony Edwards as the face of the team. Being, for me, what really endeared me to him, guys, was when Rudy came in and everybody was mean to him. Everybody, even on the team. Carl was the one guy before he got hurt that you could tell was making an effort to, we're going to get this guy in here. If I have to throw him the lobs on the roll, I'm going to do it. If I have to play a different position, I'm going to do it. If I have to sacrifice my offense, I'm going to do it. And I just don't understand how more people didn't see that a guy who spent the first half decade of his career being the guy, the number 1 overall pick, the whole bit, was maybe the best teammate. And we give Ant a lot of credit for being a teammate, but maybe the best teammate of all these guys. And then you talked about it, Craigers. I mean, just his performance in the playoffs, guarding Kevin Durant. Who would have seen that coming to help them sweep the Suns? Guarding Joker. Like, who's going to do that now? Like, he's still in the West. Exactly. When Ant is scuffling through the first half of game 7, Carl keeps that game within striking distance,
Bingo.
By having a huge first half. So I just became such a huge fan because of how he kind of moved through the franchise changing. And so that's why I am bummed about it, because I feel like a guy like that kind of deserves to have a good run with the club, because he did everything the team needed him to do. And like I said, in a long-winded Dan Barrero-like question answer, it wasn't an inside joke for the Minnesotans. It wasn't always that way for me with Cat. I came to appreciate him, but I think that's because he really came of age as well.
So you mentioned there were people that had a lot of problems with Cat because of his inconsistency and his flailing and his whining, and I accepted it. I would just say, get him out of the game if he's struggling, and then please put him back in the fourth, because he could score and he'll hit a big shot. But what I said to my friends who were saying we got to trade him is, stop. I will listen. I will absolutely listen to a trade. Tell me what we're getting. And of course, I didn't get to listen because Tim Connolly didn't call me, and John Krasinski, who probably knows, he didn't call me and tell me. So I had to find out like everybody else did. Okay, John, why was the trade was made because of money, right? I just watched the Brian Windhorst thing this morning, and the Wolves are going to lose $95 million this year or $100 million. it was mostly a money thing?
It was, but it needs to be clarified a little bit on exactly what that means. I think that initially it's easy to look at this and say either, well, you trade Cat, you get off of that $220 million, and you're bringing back two guys that are making much less. So they are going to have luxury tax savings. Their bill is not going to be as high. That's going to help them. And so you could look at that and say, well, here's Glenn Taylor being a cheap guy coming off of Western Conference Finals. He just wants to save money. Or, hey, this is Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez kind of trying to be a shadow owner and telling Tim Connolly to get him out of here so that if they win their arbitration, they come in and they don't have this big bill and this big check to cut. Right. But I really don't think that was the big thing. I think that what is happening in this new era of basketball, this new collective bargaining agreement, is when you pay that much money, when you have a payroll that high, you reach called the second apron, and that restricts your ability to make other roster moves to keep this team going. So you're very restricted on what kind of trades you can make. You're incredibly restricted on the free agents you can sign, on how much money that you can spend in free agency. You have you could, if you're in it long enough, if you're spending long enough, you can lose a draft pick at the end, several years down the road, or have it frozen at the end of the first round. And so what the Wolves looked at here was, with Karl Anthony Towns' contract as it was, that they were in line for all of those restrictions, which would very much hamper their ability to surround Anthony Edwards in his prime with players, and that will help them be competitive, not just this season, but going forward 3, 4, 5, 8 years down the road. And so they made this deal in large part so that they could continue to have flexibility and options with trades and free agency and things. And it wasn't because we can't afford this, literally.
Okay. Do you think, who pushed for it the most? Was it the ownership? Was it Tim Connolly? Was it Glenn Taylor involved? He had to be involved.
Yeah. So Glenn Taylor made the final decision when on Friday night, and they had this deal in, and they had to call Glenn Taylor to get permission. And Glenn Taylor was on board with that. I believe that Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez would be supportive of this move too. Yeah. You want to know, but you really want to know, Craigers, who pushed for this? The New York Knicks. The New York Knicks. Yeah. They were the ones. They've been constantly trying to get Cat for a very long time. And finally, the Wolves had resisted all of their offers. Like, nope, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. You're not being serious. Yeah. We're not going to do this. Finally, on Friday, they said, okay, we're finally going to give you DiVincenzo. Like, that's who you want with Randall.
It's going to become Gaardsy's favorite player, DiVincenzo. You're going to love this guy.
I love saying it.
And so,
I loved him at Nova.
Yep. And so so that was the thing. And so that's when the Wolves said, okay, let's go. And I do think that there was just recognition in ownership, and there was recognition in the front office that eventually they were going to have to probably trade Cat, whether it's next year or at the trade deadline or something. So they got a deal that they liked, and they said, let's give it a whirl here.
So I like to tell people that prior to the Timberwolves coming into the league in 1989, I was an NBA fan for 20 years. I was a Knicks fan first. My dad was from New York. I was a Walt Clyde Frazier fan, Dave DeBusschere, Bill Bradley, Willis Reed, Earl the Pearl Monroe. The viewers might not know it, but I'm actually older than Jonny Athletic and Gaardsy. So I've been following the league for a long time. When KG was traded to Boston, now he didn't want to get traded, my understanding, and Cat didn't want to get traded. But I was like, we have failed KG. Let him go somewhere. And I was so happy he went to this legendary franchise, the Boston Celtics. Cat's from New Jersey. I'm happy he's with the Knicks. I'm glad and he'll like it too. John, have you gotten any reaction from Finchy or Ant about the trade?
So nothing really publicly yet. That today is media day, so we will see. The trade isn't done yet, so I don't know how they're going to be able to be, how forthcoming they're going to be able to be. All the indications are, though, that in the information that I've gathered is that everyone was understanding of the move and ready to go with it. this was not a case of we have to get rid of Cat. This was not a case of this isn't working with Cat. Go do something else. They all recognize Cat's talent. They all really like him as a person. But I do think that both parties, Finch and Anthony Edwards, look at what is coming back in the deal, look at what doors it opens for the future, and hopefully for competitive longevity.
Right.
And they're good with it. So
Right.
I said on Barrero yesterday, like, if Anthony Edwards didn't want this to happen at all, if he was like, no, I want Cat with me to go into next season, he would be here. Like, that's just how influential he has to be. So I'm sure that he is very sorry to see Cat go. They got along great. He really appreciated Cat, but I think he understood why this is happening and what's coming back and what's going to help him that way.
If Ant has that power, I guess Jaden McDaniels will never be traded.
That's right.
Gaardsy, who are you most excited about? Julius Randle or Dante DiVincenzo?
I'm really excited about that heavily protected Detroit Pistons pick that continues to get worse. On Friday night, people are like, but wait, you're going to like that Pistons pick. And then I'm like, well, it's protected. Like, when are the Pistons ever going to be that good that it's going to be like mid-teens, Johnny? Like that one's going to be converted to like a 20, 30 second rounder. So I felt better about it there. I've always been intrigued by Randall. I remember watching him at Kentucky too, right? The year before Cat got there, I think. I like his game. I'm curious how he kind of fits in this thing. I would be shocked if he didn't pick up his player option next year, Johnny, or maybe they try to extend it or whatever. But they certainly needed more shooting. That's why they wanted Dante last year, and now they really need more shooting because Karl Anthony Towns is no longer here. Somebody asked me over the weekend, well, who was their best three-point shooter? And I said, Cat.
Yeah.
Karl was. And I think we even saw when Cat got hurt, which is another thing in my last answer, how he came back from injury to get his surgery, get whatever procedure he needed to have done and be ready to go was unbelievable. But when Cat got hurt, they didn't lose a ton of ground when Cat got hurt, but they lost a little bit, right? Because they had games where they just couldn't score. I'm thinking about that Chicago game at home. I'm thinking about obviously the Phoenix games late where they got run out of the gym. They just couldn't get a bucket, and they didn't have a guy that could just like Karl can, get you 12 points in a quarter and feel good about it. But DiVincenzo obviously is a stud. He's a two-way player. It sounds like he can play point guard a little bit. I like that you have another option for the Nickeil Alexander-Walker spot too, because as good as he was the whole season, part of the reason why they didn't, I think, play well against Dallas is he was essentially a no-show. The corner threes that he was making, the reason they blew out Denver in game 2 is because Naz and Na were just crushing everything. That kind of went away as the playoffs went along, even in that Denver series. And so to have another option like that, who's a dead-eye shooter, who can play a little point guard, who can guard, who's used to winning, I think that's all good. I'm very intrigued by the players that they got back. I understand why they did it basketball reasons. What I'm trying to figure out, Johnny, is I get the long-term ramifications of all of this, but does it make them a better team this year? Like, everyone's excited about this year. We were all ready to run it back this year. The lower bowl is sold out season tickets this year. It's not 2028. And Finchie, I'm sure, was spending all summer continuing to do 4 and 5 pick and rolls with Cat and Rudy. And how's that going to work? It was great in the playoffs. How does that all work?
I wanted them to run it back again. I know Gaardsy and I said, let's run it back after the struggling the first year of Rudy. We said, let's just run it back. Let's see. I think there's something might happen here. And then it went better than we thought. And I wanted them to run it back again. So one of my things I've said to people about Cat, as gifted as he is offensively, he doesn't do the 3 dribble to the right and pull up like Brandon Ingram. He doesn't do the mid-range jumper. You know how Jokic will back you down and then fade away. He's either jump shot or Cat's jump shot or line drive. Well, Julius Randle, he backs people down. Now it's a bit of a ball stopper. He takes he pounds and pounds and pounds. Almost like one of my favorite players, Mark Aguirre, that you guys don't remember. But anyway,
I have his card.
Randall shot 31% on threes, Cat 42% on threes last year. So Randall, he's not Cat, but he is a good rebounder. He might provide some good defense and he might fit in nicely. I'm staying optimistic. I wanted to tell you something. I want to talk rotations with you guys. I just saw Austin Rivers on a podcast say about after the trade. He thinks Naz might play crunch time over Julius Randle, and he says DiVincenzo will be in crunch time. So who are the 5 players on the court, Johnny?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, I do think there's a great argument for Naz, given that he's a 40% 3-point shooter. He's a spacer. If you want Rudy out there, Naz and Rudy were an unbelievable combination analytically last year for the Wolves. And so he just gives a different element than Randall does. And so if you want to do Naz, Rudy, Jaden, Conley, and Ant, or, you know, DiVincenzo and instead of Jaden, if he's having an off night, something like that. I mean, you're going to have Conley out there, right? Like, he's got to be out there running the show in crunch time. It will be interesting to see how Finchy really incorporates Randall, because there is a great argument that Naz should start and Randall should come off the bench. I don't think that's gonna happen, because Randall's the new guy in town. You know, he's an all-star. He's trying to get a new contract as well. And so Finch knows him. He coached him in New Orleans, and so they'll have to get creative for how you run an offense with Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle, and Anthony Edwards all wanting to be around the rim. And, you know, I know Randle has a good mid-range game and all of that stuff, but one of Finchy's biggest criticisms of the offense when it's not going well is the ball gets sticky. Doesn't move. And Ant and Randle both are primary culprits with that. So I don't know how they're going to do it to make sure that that ball pops, that Randle is spacing the floor enough. He is a good corner 3-point shooter, so maybe there's some way that they can do it that way. But I am not worried at all about DiVincenzo's transition here. It's going to be seamless. They're going to figure it out. Randle is a much more complicated guy to fit into this, and it's going to be on Finch to figure that part of it out.
Yeah, I've watched sometimes, you watch the opposing team against the Wolves and you say, man, I wish we had Mikal Bridges or a shooter like this. I saw Randle light up the Wolves.
Yeah.
And
57 points.
And what'd you just say?
He scored 57 against the Wolves.
I forgot. I know that's his career high. I forgot it was against the Wolves.
Yeah.
And Adam Morrison had his career high against the Wolves too. I think it was like 37.
Mike James did too with the Raptors. Yeah. I was at that game, and then we signed him, unfortunately.
But I do like the mid-range sometimes. I like that. I when you can back down a player and score. And I'm just trying to think. Do you guys? I was on. I was talking to Dane Moore on. I think he was on my pod, and I threw him off when I had moved Naw down in the rotation, and I said, I love Naw, but one of my favorite players is Josh Okogie. I know we had to trade him. I'm just saying I'm trying to win a championship, and I want Terrence Shannon to play. I think I'm high on him. I'm in that honeymoon period. But what do you think the rotation is? Gaardsy, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've written down my thoughts, but.
Well, I think the guys Johnny just mentioned, I think it depends on the rookies, right? I think it depends on how quickly they get established. Naz is going to play a bunch. This clearly frees him up. I mean, he was playing a lot anyway. He won the 6th man of the year. So it is going to be interesting how they navigate the guard spots, given that they have DONTE now. Nah probably has to fall down a peg or two, doesn't he? And,
yes.
And you're definitely gonna let these two first rounders at least try to earn their way in. So I don't know how it's going to shake out, but I think your instinct there, Craigers, is right. That's as great as he's been, and he's a great two-way player too. You've got different guys in that space now that they're probably going to give some run to.
Right, John. Do you have? I mean, I've thought about this, but do you have a 6, 7, 8, 9?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So yeah, I mean, let's assume that Randall starts to do it. So then I think it's Naz as the 6th man.
Correct.
It is DiVincenzo as 7.
That's what I have. Right.
I do think then you go. Then you probably still go Nah at 8.
I have Dillingham at 8, but that's okay. That's fine.
Yeah,
and then
it's Dillingham 9, and then Shannon as 10.
How rude you are and disrespectful to Joe Ingles.
Yeah,
that's true. There's Ingles too.
Yeah,
he's an old man, but he's gonna.
Yeah,
You know what I heard? Yeah, I heard the other day, and I'd forgotten about this, but this is true. They say if you guard him and you put your hand on him, he just slaps it away. He just keeps slapping your arm. If you touch him on, he's a character.
He is, but I think he is. One thing that this trade does, it does two things for them from a depth standpoint. One is Joe Ingles is older and he doesn't play a lot these days, so it allows them to like save him for big spots. Yeah. And whether it's in the regular season or in the playoffs, I think he will be fresh because you're not going to need to play him a ton in the regular season. That's a very good thing, and he can actually help them in a big way sporadically, and then in the playoffs, I think especially. But then two is you also don't have to put a ton on Rob Dillingham's shoulders right away.
Yeah,
like he is 19 years old. He is skinny as heck. Let him just ease into this thing rather than, hey kid, you're the backup point guard, get out there and take your lumps. I think they can be a lot more gradual with it, more Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers style than, Caleb Williams throwing him out there. So I like that. And then if Dillingham shows that, hey, no, I got the juice, I'm ready, then you play him more, but you don't have to play him.
Yeah. I wonder what they're going to do. I want to see how much Mike Conley has left in the tank. He's shot his career high in threes. Mm-hmm. And at the end, I think you need DiVincenzo on the court at the end of the game. So if Conley's in or out, I assume he's in. You could go with three guards with Ant, Dante, and Mike Conley, and then it becomes interesting who's in the front court. Will the defensive rating for the Timberwolves still be in the top 3? They were number 1 last year. Will it still be in the top 3 this season?
I think it can be. I mean, I think Cat, I do think that Cat was underrated in his role in that defense last year. He was not a guy that they were number 1 in defense in spite of. Like they didn't have to hide him. He was a big part of what they did, both when he was on the floor with Rudy and when he was on the floor as a center and kind of anchoring it when Rudy was resting. They were still, their defensive numbers were great in those cases with Cat out there on his own. And we remember game 2 in Denver when Rudy wasn't there. That might've been the best defensive game I've ever seen any team play in the history of the world. and Cat was there doing it. So, but I still do think that they can be, top 3 to top 5 because they're different now. They are a little more conventional. They can switch all the positions. They have versatility that they might not have had it a little bit before. And you still have Rudy Gobert and Jaden McDaniels. And if you have those two, you're going to be just fine as a defense.
Who guards Joker now?
That's the question.
That was my first question.
Hey, I mean, we saw Nas get a couple blocks on Joker, right? Yeah,
he did better. That's what's so funny about matchups is Kyle Anderson couldn't come close to guarding the Joker, and he guards Luka better than anybody. And I miss slow-mo. I'm going to miss slow-mo. One just note before we go to the Vikings is, so when we get guys, I look at them like, I thought Monte Morris was a good player. Didn't work out. Didn't get his run. Didn't do it. But we don't know how good a pro Terrence Shannon Jr. is going to be. Right now, I'm thinking he's going to be pretty good. That's because I want him to be really good. I just wonder how much he'll play as a rookie.
Yeah, it's a good question. One thing I like about him, in contrast to Dillingham, is he's a grown man. He's older than
physically. Yeah, he's got a body on him.
He's 24 years old. And he's big and strong. And so I do see him as ability to change pace. Like get out there, get out in transition, beat a couple of people up, commit a few fouls, get your butt to the rim and to the free throw line, and he can change the energy quickly if your team is a little bit stagnant. That said, is he going to be, a high minute off the bench guy? Probably not right away. But I do think that I don't think he's just going to be affixed to the bench and not play at all either. I think he's going to get opportunities. But yeah, it's not going to be kind of a featured bench role right away unless he just really just asserts himself. So, you look at this team right now with Conley and Gobert as older guys there is certainly urgency to win right away and maximize these dudes, but kind of sneakily, I mean, you have Ant, Jaden, Nas all young. You have Dillingham, Shannon, Leonard Miller. You have some really nice young pieces that might need a little more marinating, but once they're ready, you're in good shape. So it seems like a roster that's kind of built to be really competitive now, but also to sustain this for a little while.
I wanted to, you just reminded me when we talked about Terrence Shannon Jr. I just want to forewarn you guys. I see the floor. I see everything, kind of like Leo Routens as a freshman at the University of Minnesota. Terrence Shannon has a very low release point on his shot, a little like Sean Marion. I have some good news for you guys. I've observed this. I mentioned it to Kyle Teige. He kind of freaked out and said, "Oh my God, I think you're right." Ant has changed the form on his jump shot. I think I've seen that. I've seen him shooting around a little more in front, not pulling it back as far, a little more in front. It's the Kevin Durant effect.
Ooh.
So get ready to see that. I think I'm right about this. I only saw him shooting around the gym a little bit, like a 20-second clip. I said, "Oh, it's in the front more." Always trying to improve that form.
Eyes like a hawk, Kreggers. Eyes like a hawk.
We wouldn't see that.
Gaardsy, what were you thinking during the first half of the Minnesota Vikings game at the Packers yesterday?
What I tweeted out is this team is a wagon. The kids, I think, know what that means. It's incredible. I just couldn't believe how they were doing it again. I think a lot of people are waiting for it to kind of slow down, and they just came out and said, we're not going to half-step this thing. We're going to give it to the former Packer. We're going to get him going. We're going to get it to Justin Jefferson. By the way, we have Jordan Addison still. They got him involved twice. It's the team's for real. And I know we're going to talk about the meltdown because I have some thoughts about that. But even as that was happening, I was still fine. I was ready for them to completely blow the game. But I was like, this is a good team. I think we're past the point now where we're wondering, is this a team that can be considered a factor in the NFC? As surprising as that is 4 weeks into the season, I think they've done enough to say they're going to have to be dealt with as the season goes along. Like, I think they are a contender. They have everything. They've got great coaching. They've got a great kicker for now. We'll see how that goes. But it was unbelievable just because they just continue to do this to team after team after team. And I don't know where they are in the power rankings, but I know they've played three pretty established teams and they've handled them.
They started, I think, around 25th in a lot of the power rankings before the season. People said if they lose to the Giants, they could go start 0-7. They were favored in 4 games of the 17 prior to the season. I love Brian Flores. I love KOC. We'll talk about the play calling. In the past, with Zim, I was like, offensive line and kicker. But offensive line and kicker is what bothers me. You know, Sam Bradford could sling it, but he couldn't move, and they had to. What was his name? Pat Shurmur. They had to throw underneath the sticks all the time.
Pat Shurmur.
I had a question for Johnny about the Vikings are officially now a playoff team. Or is it too early? Yeah.
Oh no, absolutely. Yeah, they're there. They've had 1 good win and 3 great wins, and it's a team that all of this that they are doing, it feels sustainable and repeatable. Like they're not, you know, the 2 years ago, they win 13 games, and it was a fun season. They looked good, but they got lucky sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
They pulled some things out of their rear end, and you're like, okay, like how much longer can this go on? Everything that they're doing now looks like, they can do that next week and the week after and the week after. Why not? Like they're not, you know, I mean, Darnold has been really good for the most part with turnovers. So maybe that like goes the other way a little bit. But other than that, like, I just think that they're a team that looks great on both sides of the ball. And as Gaardsy said, with the kicker, and then, you can just, all of these performances, you can bottle them and move them to the next week. And so I think they're going to be in this for the number 1 seed for all year long. They're going to be in that conversation.
Yeah. The outside of injuries, my biggest concern, because I used to worry about the kicker and the offensive line. I no longer do. We have a good offensive line. I don't know how good. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's been good.
Yeah. I mean, so the only thing now, so, you know, sometimes the defense it happens with defenses. I was telling Gaardsy, the Minneapolis Miracle game, the defense started off great, and then New Orleans scored late in the fourth. Last year, our defense was really good for a while, and then it faded a little bit. So, and you saw it yesterday in the second half. I guess it's just hard. The other team makes adjustments. But to me, it's the play calling. And I think Coach has done, he's special. KOC is special. But last couple of years, I was concerned about some of the gadget plays and trick plays. But yesterday was interesting. That's the first time this year, I don't know. What was your issue, Gaardsy, with the play calling?
Well, I think I was thinking of Jonny yesterday because he said this before about previous Wolves teams, that no one feels better about themselves than a Timberwolves team that's won 2 games in a row.
Yeah.
And then we'll just go out and drop to the, as 20-point favorites, lose a home game to the Pistons, on a random Wednesday. You talked about the maturity of the Wolves having to improve. Yesterday, it felt like to me, they all started feeling too good about themselves. And obviously they got the play at the end of the half gives you a little bit glimmer of a hope. If Naylor just lets the ball go over his head, there's no touchdown. And they, by the way, they almost got a gift from LaFleur because he lost his mind. Yeah. If they would have been able to keep him out of the end zone there, we're probably not having this conversation. But I'm just thinking about the 2nd and 1 in the red zone where Jones is just running it right down their throat the entire drive. And they drop back to pass, and Darnold tries to fit it into Jones. Replay shows it wasn't an interception. But even that, it's okay, guys, we get it. You've got the greatest playbook ever. You've got all these tools. You've got all these toys. It gave me 98 vibes when Denny Green used to say, we do what we do, and no matter what the situation is. And even they had to throw it on the drive that ended up, I think, one of when the Packers really cut it, they threw it, I think, 5 out of 6 times, and Darnold was great. JJ made that critical catch. But there was that game ended at 3:35 Central. It should have been done about 3:10, but they just refused to end the game by running the ball, running the clock, even throwing on some late third downs. It's just shrink the game here, guys, and let's get out of here. I would have kicked the field goal rather than go for it on 4th and 1. I understand the argument for it, but the problem I have with it is your defense wasn't playing very well at that point. Jordan Love was just finding little pockets all over the place. Yeah. So, I wasn't going to lose my mind if they lost that game yesterday. Weird things happen, but it just felt to me that they were feeling so good about themselves that they allowed Green Bay to come back into the game a little bit with some of the decisions that they made.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to play call when you're up 28-0, but it's a good problem to have. I will say one of my least favorite things, I'm a perfectionist. I don't like turnovers. I don't like Anthony Edwards turning it over. I don't like the Vikings turning it over. I'm unrealistic here, but Brandon Powell got hurt. He's our punt returner. And I'm like, oh, who's the backup? Okay, it's Jalen Naylor. And the sun's in his eyes. Just run away.
Yes.
Let the ball bounce. So that was really irritating. The pick, for some reason, didn't bother me as much. I thought he underthrew Aaron Jones. Mm-hmm. How long do you guys think the Sam Darnold magic, and if we're going to call it magic, I think he's just playing, solid football, or maybe better than solid, because he's I think he's the top rated, he's 3rd rated after Josh Allen and somebody else. I think Andy Dalton, I saw this morning, was the 2nd rated.
Yeah.
But how long, Johnny, do you think, at the end of the season, where do you think Sam Darnold will be? Will he be playing the same way, or are we going to go through some bumps here?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the sample size of Sam Darnold's career would tell you that there's got to be maybe a rough game or two here where he throws 2, 3, 4 picks in 2 games, and that's coming because he did get a little bit lucky against Houston. A couple of tipped balls that could have gone the other way just didn't. And he made another reckless throw against Green Bay. I can't remember. It was earlier in the game.
It was almost picked. He was almost. It was picked on the opening drive.
Yeah, and then they went down and scored. Yep.
Yeah.
So I do have a little bit of concern about that. Is that going to reemerge and resurface? But by and large, I love the decisions that he's been making. I think that his talent, his physical skill set, is one that fits perfectly with what they need. And so, this again is not like a Case Keenum, who's coming out and looks like, I mean, he's just having a magical run. Like he is
Yeah.
hot and he's got a great, and I love Case. That was a super fun season, but that was also one where it's like, okay, he's got some magic going right now. Ride it as long as you can and be ready for when it's not going to be there. But with Sam, big, strong, cannon for an arm, can move around in the pocket, and you do have KOC in general putting him in great positions, drawing up great plays for him. When Hawkinson comes back, man, now there's another weapon too. So I think that he can be a very good player for this entire season. Will he be MVP level like he is right now? Maybe not, but like he can be a really good quarterback that wins a lot of games for you all season long.
I love talent. I love his arm, but
Yep.
the mobility is what I get a kick out of, because that was my problem with Kirk. I would just watch different players and say different quarterbacks. Garoppolo is more mobile than Kirk. Everybody's like that run yesterday by Darnold. I thought he was going to get sacked. Gaardsy, do you love his mobility?
I do, and I thought he could have used it even more yesterday. There were a couple of other times where I thought he scrambled and could have run for a first down, but I do like that he tries to stay with the play from time to time as well. Johnny's right; the line's protecting him really well. You know, Green Bay had 8 sacks a week ago. They didn't really get to him until later in the game yesterday. So if you're going to keep him clean like that, and you're going to protect him like that, and he has ability to get out like he does, there's no reason why this thing can't be sustainable.
Is Aaron Jones overachieving?
I don't think so.
I think that's who he is.
This is who he has been now. As long as he stays healthy, this is the guy. Like that. Everything that we are seeing is what he has put on tape in Green Bay for his entire career. And so I do think, guys, that last season, I think KOC vastly underestimated the importance of defense or of running game. Sorry,
running game. Yeah.
Yep.
I thought that he said, we'll be fine. We can have Madison and we can, just kind of plow that forward a little bit and we'll just throw the thing all over the place and everything will be great. I think that he learned his lesson from that. And now you get Aaron Jones and he looks spry. He's got plenty of juice. And the one thing I love about him is he always falls forward.
Yeah.
Like it's, he might have 3 yards and then it turns into 6.
Yeah.
He might have 2 yards and then it's a 5-yard gain because he just figures a way to just move forward, fall forward, and keep you in positive situations. He's so crafty that way.
Yeah.
In addition to the dynamic abilities that he has in the open field. So I think, it's gone perfectly for them with him. As long as they keep him healthy, he should be great. He should be good the whole way.
I didn't know he was that good of a pass catcher.
That's it.
And,
they used him in the screen game so well too. I mean, if Ed Ingram wasn't just like chilling by the 10 yesterday, I'm still trying to figure out what he was waiting for on that screen. He might have been able to do the authentic Lambeau leap.
Yeah. Did you see it was on the opening drive? Might have even been the second play. Third screen pass left side to Aaron Jones, and Brandel was almost in the way of the pass.
I couldn't believe that Darnold got it through. I
couldn't either.
It. Yes, I was
so
like,
is that on Brandel for the timing or what?
I'm not
Probably.
sure, but I said it. I was like, that's the greatest screen pass I've ever seen in my life. Like the way that it got through Brandel and got to Jones. I have no idea how it got there.
I think Brandel's supposed to be back further. I don't know where he's supposed to be, but he was
not there. I'll tell you that. Wherever he was supposed to be, it was not there.
Oh, that was, man. Part of me is kind of like, I wasn't worried about losing the game. And I think, Gaardsy, you said it wouldn't be the end of the world because I don't panic like that. Right. But I do think there's something about that the game was close, saying, okay, good. So we're not going to get too high right now, and so it's good going forward that we win the game and we know we have something to work on. So a lot of people are, and by the way, Gaardsy or Johnny is doing his job because he's got media day and there's been a second trade right now.
Nope. I'll break the news if there was. I'll break it on the spot.
I can tell there's some scoops coming though. I mean, Johnny's looking down. I'm just drinking my coffee, enjoying the conversation. Johnny's, grinding over there.
Why not? Minot? Is he still on the team, Josh Minot? Okay.
Still on it.
I'm not afraid to talk about Super Bowls and Vikings because I know the people back in Minnesota, it's elephant in the room and it hangs over their life and it's dreary. I just like that we've been great for so long, and I think a Super Bowl will happen. And I just, now that we're playing well, we, again, it's only 4 games. Are we the top team in the NFC? And just to be really irresponsible, who's coming out of the AFC and can we beat them?
Buffalo again, right, Johnny? I mean,
it might be, but Baltimore
last night.
I
Yeah.
like Baltimore now. Like, I know they had a loss early, but and Kansas City, you can never rule out, but I like Baltimore, with Henry and Lamar, and defense looks good. So they look really good. Buffalo does look good. And Kansas City, but yeah, in the NFC, what team has looked better than the Vikings so far? No one. No one's close. Yeah. No one's close to what they've looked like on both sides of the ball.
Gaardsy?
Well, should we start scouting the AFC, Craigers? Is that a homework assignment for the Super Bowl to start knowing playoff matchups? I'm fine doing that, but I agree with Johnny. I mean, you look, the teams that are supposed to be good, like the Niners, you pretty much handled them. You're an Aaron Jones fumble away from basically blowing them out. The Packers
done. Yep.
Yeah, and there's asterisks with a lot of these teams, right? Because obviously Jordan Love is coming off of an injury yesterday, and he kind of just bulldozed them right out of the gate. Like, the Packers are going to be heard from. Philly seems to be a mess right now, right? Like, all these teams we thought were supposed to be good and maybe towards the top of the conference, they all have issues. So I don't see any reason why the Vikings shouldn't consider themselves one of, if not the team to beat at this point through a month.
Yeah, usually in the playoffs, it seems like it's a close games, and oftentimes the top quarterback seems to come out. Like Patrick Mahomes beat Brock Purdy in the Super Bowl. Let me think, Johnny. What's up today for the media day? What's going to happen?
Well, yeah, it's going to be awkward because we can't. I think we're gonna get up there and they're gonna say, well, the trade isn't done yet, so we can't comment on that. And it's like, well, then what are we even doing here? Like,
hypothetically, Nas. Hypothetically,
Yes. If you were
you like Julius Randle?
If there were to be 34 minutes available, would you be interested in those, Nas? Like, that's the kind of stuff that we're probably going to have to do and see what happens. But it will be. I will just say, like, I'm looking forward to being there because I do think that this is the most anticipated Wolves season ever. Even more so than 05 and or 04, 05, and we know how that ended up going. But this team is just so talented. You have Ant back. You have this intriguing trade to look at. It's going to be a lot of stuff to unpack, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to it.
You're going to be busy with The Athletic. I subscribe to The Athletic, and I read Johnny's articles. They're very good, and there's some other a lot of talented writers there. It's the new Sports Illustrated from the 70s. It's that good. Gaardsy, what do you want John to ask today?
Oh, man. I want the chemistry question. Who's in charge of the chemistry now? Who's in charge of keeping everything tight? Because me, I'm big on vibes. Some people like execution. I'm about vibes, Craigers, and I like the vibe.
That's why Steve Nash would always fist bump his teammates. Stay connected, Steve Nash. Stay connected.
I'm just curious because no one's had a better vibe than the Wolves the last few years, even going back to the Pat Bev jumping on the table. Like, the whole thing was kind of clicking. So, I'm just curious how how it's going to fit, how it's going to mix. Is this team better than it was a week ago on paper in a stacked and loaded West? Those are all the questions I have. I understand why they did the move. I've always liked Randall. Like I said, I like Dante. I'm just curious how it's all going to fit together.
Okay, quickly, we're going to wrap up. I'm going to do a rapid fire I'm going to name 4 restaurants in the Twin Cities, maybe 5. Tell me if you've been there in the last 3 months.
We both have young kids, Craig. We haven't been anywhere.
And
hey,
Johnny,
I was told we can't talk about kids on the Life Gorgeous. That's what I was told the last time I was joined the pod.
Children are not part of the Life Gorgeous.
I've been to McDonald's and Culver's. I can tell
you. I just know that Johnny is a snob and doesn't go to St. Paul. But we'll start with the Lexington and St. Paul.
No, we haven't. We need to get you back here, Craiger, so I can get over there because
Right.
I loved it. I need a reason to go, so please come back.
Stefan Diggs had a birthday party once at the Lexington. Justin, you ever been to the Lexington?
I have never been to the Lexington. I've been by it a lot. All of my friends love it. We were just talking about it last week, as a matter of fact, but I have not yet been there. And I'll make a pledge. If you come to town, Craigers, again, I'll figure it out this time because I didn't get to go last time. I'll figure it out.
Perfect. Mason Margot.
Still on my list. FEMA keeps telling me to come on over, and I will be there eventually. I have not made it ever, and so I feel so bad, Chef FEMA. I will be over there soon.
No,
Gaardsy?
I'll keep it brief. No, have not been.
Okay. Have you guys been to any Gavin Kaysen restaurants? He has Demi. He has Mara at the Four Seasons, and of course Spoon and Stable.
I've been to Spoon and Stable.
Yeah.
Not in a long time, but I've been there. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And then we finish up with Manny's.
Manny's is my favorite. I love the place. And I used to go there with my grandfather once a year, and he's since passed, but it has been too long since I've been back there. Prime rib that is the size of my head. And my grandpa would take me in college, and I would have a
very big head, by the way.
yeah, exactly. So I would have it for 3 days afterward. It was great. So.
Yeah,
Gaardsy?
yes, man. I have been there. I can check that off the list. I've been there.
We're happy
few
for
times. Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Ian Eagle had his dinner there when he was in town for the Houston Texans game. He went to Manny's.
Question I had on Ian, because
Yeah.
Noah was doing the Gopher game the night before. Did they have breakfast on Sunday?
Oh.
Did father and son get to hang out in Minneapolis because Noah Eagle was in town on Saturday night?
Ian is a little sore that Noah got to broadcast the Olympics, so I don't think they did.
That's the bad blood.
And finally, Murray's.
Murray's, I was there this summer at one point. Yep. Had lunch with a Wolves member of the Wolves front office at Murray's. So yeah, I've been there. So
Cool.
Yes, not with a member of the Wolves front office, but it was many, many years ago. One of my buddies' dads used to take him all the time, so I got to jump in on that too.
One of the greatest signs of a restaurant in America,
Yes.
the Murray's sign. I just love staring at it. After the Wolves win, I go there and just stare at it and say, please don't trade Cat. No. Thank you, guys. That was a blast. I know I'll see Johnny Tuesday, October 22nd. I will be sitting there with Charlie Swanson at the Wolves Laker game. Gaardsy, I'll see you probably in the playoffs. I'm busy over here.
I was going to say, I'll see you round one. I'm busy too, but thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys. That's our show, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you next time. And remember, young people, I'm proud of you.
I love the life gorgeous. Its torso is so tight.